Morning, everyone. To start today, some gathering music as people are arriving. I'd like to lead us in We Shall Not Be Moved. We're talking about hope in difficult times. And for me personally, my hope is active, and I find it in activism and in the gathering of friends and strangers for making the world a better place. And this song, Mark, if you could bring up the slide again, please. I've sang in like 3 protests in the past 2 weeks. So I thought I'd lead it today, bring it to you all with some different focuses. I'll just get going. You're welcome to join me. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. United in the struggle, we shall not be moved. United in the struggle, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Young and old together, we shall not be moved. Young and old together, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Queer and straight together, we shall not be moved. Queer and straight together, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Fighting for our health care, we shall not be moved. Fighting for our health care, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Keep our health care public, we shall not be moved. Keep our health care public, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. And the occupation, we shall not be moved. And the occupation, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. Ceasefire, we shall not be moved. Ceasefire, we shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's standing by the water. We shall not be moved. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to your neighborhood Unitarian Universalist congregation. My name is Susanne. I have your announcements. Our first announcement is discussion of a conversation on racism in Canada with Reverend Pat Trudeau and Dr. Wilburn Hayden is happening next Sunday here from 1 to 2:30. All are welcome. And in our gallery, both behind me and in the upper galleries, we have an exciting new show, Diorama Dramas by Martha Davis. And this will be here throughout the summer. Come by and check them out anytime. Update for our summer services, what's happening at Neighborhood this summer. We're moving to bi-weekly services. So in July, we'll have service on the 14th and 28th. In August, on the 11th and 25th. No service on Labor Day weekend, and then we get going again weekly starting the 8th of September. Exploring the origins of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia is happening here in Rafos Hall from 2 to 3:30. And following that presentation, there will be a discussion on ways we can support one another through these uncertain times. This will be guided by the faith leaders of the DMC and the East Toronto multi-faith community. The Coffee Committee is calling out for volunteers. If you can donate snacks, or even better, sign up and give Linda a Sunday off and take over snack time for a Sunday. She sure would appreciate it being a committee of one person. So if the cost is a concern, those can be expensed in neighborhood, or you can ask for a receipt. So please coordinate with Linda if you can help out in the kitchen on a Sunday. Council of All Beings workshop is happening this Saturday from 10:30 to 5. It was happening at the Bain, but it has been moved here to Rafos Hall. Gather in this community ritual to speak on behalf of the non-human world and receive their gifts to continue healing and protecting our planet. That's co-led by Bruce Line, Natalie Zen, with music by Larry Nussbaum. Circle music is happening June 16th from 3 to 5. That's led by Jane Lewis and myself. It's an improvised singing circle. It's a chance to be in the moment, tune in, listen, share your voice, and we do a lot of laughing. If you want to hear more about circle music, talk to me after service. Our services are co-created by the help of our staff and volunteers. Myself, Susanne Moira, being the music director, Julia Thompson being our LL director, our contract minister is Pat Trudeau. Today we have Kurt as our service weaver, and Mark handling our AV duties. Thank you, everyone. Next Sunday, continuing our theme of joyful justice, we're having a pride service with the title Saving and Celebrating Lives. Our speaker will be Reverend Stephen Atkinson. Our own spirit choir will be doing the music. Our service weaver will be Peter. And time for all ages with Julia.
You think you have a chair in the right spot? Namaste and blessings. My name is Kurt Thompson, and I am honored to be service weaving this morning. I offer a special welcome to Kofi Hope, who will be delivering our message of inspiration this morning. For those here in the sanctuary and on Zoom, sacred space is a delicate, fragile thing that can be easily broken by unwanted sounds or electronic beeps. So I asked you to please turn off any distracting electronic devices that are not necessary for your participation in this service. Now, please read with me our invocation, which will be projected on our screens. Let us cast a circle of a sacred space here. Let us cast a circle of a cherished space here, a space of safety, a place of forgiveness, a place of love. If we want the world to change, we must craft in our space and in ourselves the seeds that grow a different kind of life, a life of graciousness, of creative intelligence, a place of life and spirit for ourselves and our families. And to light the symbol of our faith, a lit chalice, I invite Jillian Newcomb to please come forward. And please sing along with our chalice lighting invocation. Just before we get to our prelude, just another quick reminder to please turn off your mobiles. Thank you. And now I graciously ask Susanne Moira and Moira McDonald to present our prelude.
I was saving power. I heard that's a good thing to do. So I have to remember that I was trying to do that. This morning, the prelude is a hymn in our, what we call the Teal book, Singing the Journey, called Cuando el Pobre. And this is a hymn adapted from Latin American hymns of the, I guess, 60s and 70s. And they came out of a tradition that was starting to brew around something called liberation theology, where there were members, priests in the Catholic Church in Latin America who looked around themselves and saw that a lot of the people that they were preaching to were oppressed and marginalized, and and yet their church was actually one that was really favoring the elites. So this song, this hymn, comes from the words in Matthew, where it says, the book of Matthew in the New Testament that Christians use, where they talk about those who God is saying, you know, or Jesus is saying, those who I was thirsty and you gave me water. I was hungry and you gave me food. And the people who gave him these things were the people who didn't have much of that themselves. They're the ones who enter the kingdom of heaven, and our salvation is tied up in the salvation of everyone. So that's what this hymn is singing to.
One day
I stand here on the lands that are the traditional and sacred and traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat, who have been on this land for time out of memory, who have been joined by the Métis and the Inuit people. I give thanks to the grass and the sage, the tall trees and the trees that bear fruit, and to the nourishing and life-giving waters. All of these things I am merely a small part of, and must be sure to take care of them in order to take care of myself. Now let us continue in sacred space. We enter here from many beliefs, and we grow from many traditions. Our services vary from week to week. So if you're here for the first time, please come again, so you might notice something a little different, so you can learn a little bit more about us. And if you really do wish to learn more about us, take a red mug in our coffee time in our cappuccino room, and that is a signal that you wish to be approached. Our mission here at Neighborhood is to empower spiritual growth and shared action for the care of our world. Our theme for the month of June is Joyful Justice, and our guest speaker, Kofi, will be talking about finding hope in the spiritual in hard times. When I first heard the idea of this service, I instantly thought of a person that brought me comfort when I was a child. Fred Rogers, who said this: "When I was a little boy and I got scared of things that I saw on the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. On the sidelines, you will always find those who are helping. When you look for the helpers, there will be hope.'" And now let us find hope in our community here today. Look around, rise up, say hello, wave a hand, give a laugh to all of your neighbors. And then when you're done that for a moment, look on the other side of the room to the cameras and say hello to the people on Zoom. And when you are saying hello to a neighbor, find a face that you haven't seen before. Susanne will sound a chime to end.
You can stay risen. We're going to sing together. I'll invite Moira to come back up. This is a Stephen Foster song from 1854. And I guess some things never change. We also wish for hard times to come again no more. Can rise and join us in singing, please.
Let us pause in life's pleasures and count its many tears.
again no more. While we sing birth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms waiting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. It's the sigh that is weathered across the troubled wave. 'Tis the word that is heard upon the shore. 'Tis the dirge that is murmured around the lonely grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. 'Tis the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again more. Many days you will linger around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Oh, hard times come again no more.
Hi there. I'm Julia. Time for all ages. And grab a cushion. I invite the kids to come and join. That would be great. I have Christina helping us out today, so I'm very grateful for her. So this story is called The Rabbit Listened by Corey Dorfeld. And this story is about connecting, and it's not connecting to the internet. I personally connected to this story on a very human level, and I wanted to share it with you. So here goes. The Rabbit Listened. Oh, and this is from the Toronto Public Library, very dear to my heart. The Rabbit Listened. One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special, something amazing. Taylor was so proud. Ta-da! There he is as a block person, or they are as a block person up on top. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. Look, what a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Grrr, grrr. I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. Grrr. But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. Trumpa-doo, I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant also left. One by one they came. The hyena. I don't know how it, can you do a hyena, somebody? Like a laugh kind of. Not a very nice laugh, but The ostrich, gulp, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, tisk tisk, what a mess, let's throw it all away. And the snake, shh, let's knock down somebody else's. But Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually they all left, and Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit, but it moved closer and closer until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to build again. "I can't wait," Taylor said. "It's going to be amazing." Has Taylor made this yet? No. How do you know?
Because it's not brown.
Yeah, it's going to be, you feel like sometime in the future.
It also looks really, really tall.
Yes, that's right. Well, this maybe is Taylor's hopes, right? Because the rabbit gave Taylor hope.
Probably in the future he's going to live in that.
Maybe. So maybe sometime, maybe, you'll meet someone like Taylor who is going through hard times, and maybe they'll just need someone that cares enough to actually just listen to them. And then you might help them to build up their hopes again and rebuild their tower. Thank you. I know. Yes.
Some
Thank you.
hugs say more than
Oh,
words.
thank you. Can you say it? Can you actually?
Some hugs say more than words.
Yes. Thank you so much for seeing that. I didn't even see that at the back. Thank you. Oh, okay. Can you see it?
Some hugs say more than words.
Yeah, it was at the back, and I didn't notice it. Thank you, Jody. All right. Let's go.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. So it's a pleasure to be here with this wonderful congregation again. And to start today's reflection, I have a question. For those here, has anyone felt any sort of distress, worry, anguish, any kind of negative mental state recently about current events? The war in Gaza, maybe, climate change, Ukraine, Donald Trump, racism, anti-Semitism. See, okay, it's a lot of people. That's most of the room, actually. Now, Peter Marmarak, a member of your congregation and a former teacher of mine, introduced me many years ago to these words of wisdom from the Talmud, the Jewish holy book, and I want to share them today. Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. And this piece of scripture was pretty formative and grounding for me. I'm founder of a charity that's now called the C Center for Young Black Professionals. Actually proud to say it's now become the largest charity in Canada serving Black youth. But it had humble origins. And it was founded back in 2012. And when we started out, I was working with one other staff member in a small windowless office in the Jane Finch community, in the Black Creek Community Health Center, and had, a desk and a pencil and some stationery, and there was an old desk up there. And then the other thing in the room, on the wall, I printed out those words. And I put them right to the left of where I sat, so I could kind of look at them throughout the day. And so for the first couple of years, every day, those sacred words from the Talmud were there as a companion as we did the hard work of building this charity. And I mention this because we are in a time where so many people are daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. It truly feels enormous, and we're just bombarded with suffering all the time. It's just like constant waves of bad news and anxiety that the world seems to be throwing at us. And I'll say in my own personal circles, my peer group, my friends, there was some of this with the murder of George Floyd for sure, but with the war in Gaza in particular, the way it's been impacting people's mental health, the amount of folks who've talked to me about going to sleep crying at night, feeling overwhelmed, feeling hopeless, feeling that there's, no purpose in engaging with systems. It's unprecedented. So how do we talk about joy in justice, joy in social change in such a world? When I think about that quote I began with, it's so interesting. Because on one hand, just imagine the world of the author of that, right, a couple thousand years ago. In their own lives and communities, grief would have been omnipresent. Women would die in childbirth all the time. Young children would pass constantly before they even reached the age of 2. War was a reality. Slavery was a reality. Starvation was a reality. So there was a lot of grief they were talking about. And honestly, on a scale we living in modern times can't truly comprehend. And yet, the enormity of the world's grief was still local, because that's all folks knew. If you were in Palestine or Judea or Egypt or Greece, you had no idea about the suffering going on in India or China or potentially even just over the hill. But what makes our age so unique is that, especially in the last 15 years really, we have perfected technologies that bombard us at all hours of the day with the world's grief. Literally, the notifications on my phone from BBC News, if I don't silence it, they'll be going off at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., throughout the night. And many of us are addicted to it. I'm the first one to admit, and maybe I'm a little unique. I'm a political scientist by training. I kind of live for this stuff. But I am addicted to reading news on my phone. And it's such a common thing, especially reading bad news, that people have a name for it: doom scrolling. And I think increasingly we are seeing the impact that this is having on our mental and our spiritual health, being so connected to bad news. And it's not to say that technology is inherently bad, or even that reading bad news is inherently bad, right? History is full of examples of how sharing stories of suffering can support justice work. One example, Uncle Tom's Cabin. So this was a book that was published in 1852. Uncle Tom, of course, now is a pejorative term, but he was the main fictional character in this book, but he was based on a real African-American man, Josiah Henson, who actually escaped enslavement in the US and settled here in Ontario. You can, if you're driving down to Detroit one day, you can stop along the way, see his grave, and the community of enslaved and now free Africans that they had formed there. There's a little museum. It's a great kind of Ontario history stop. But anyways, I mentioned this book by Harriet Beecher Stowe because it was actually the top-selling novel of the 1800s. And this book, what made it so important was it was one of the first times many white Americans and folks all over the world learned about the conditions of slavery in the US. And there were critiques that it wasn't so accurate and the characters were a little too subservient, but the reality is it had a massive impact on building support for the movement to abolish slavery, as did other nonfiction slave narratives which were printed at the time, the most famous being Frederick Douglass's My Bondage, My Freedom, which was published a few years later in 1855. And that's an amazing book, but it's got a lot of grief in it. There is a lot of suffering. But these real accounts of slavery were part of a trend in the 1800s of political pamphlets and literature about current issues that people would read, they'd be shocked by what was described, and it would push them to action. Fast forward 100 years, we can think in the Civil Rights Movement and then the Vietnam War, how now this new technology of television brought into American homes and homes all over the world the brutality of police violence and racist mobs in the US South and the unfiltered horrors of an American war overseas. And again, seeing the enormity of the world's grief inspired some of the most successful and admirable justice movements in human history. So being exposed to the enormity of the world's grief is not a bad thing in of itself. Neither is technology that brings this news to us, whether it's the printing press or the radio or the television, right? This has helped in the past. But we also now need to acknowledge something is different. Not only do we see images and videos of the world's grief all the time, but we're also in an environment where it's being shared in this global public square, where we witness our fellow citizens, our fellow travelers on this small, tiny green rock, screaming at each other, demeaning each other, condemning each other, canceling each other as they battle over the meaning of these events and these images. And the technologies themselves feed this. As the great Netflix documentary, The Social Network, said, if you are consuming a free product like Facebook or Twitter, now X, or Instagram, then Facebook is actually not the product. You are the product. With this current model in social media companies are not selling software. They are selling advertisers your engagement with their free software. Your eyeballs and your personal data are the product. And so their job is to farm engaged humans. And they build platforms to be as addictive, as hard to put down, as hard to silence as possible. And they inflame the emotions that drive that engagement. Outrage, fear, anger, hate, they drive great engagement. Much better, it seems, than joy. I was doing a little research around this, and I saw a quote. Mark Zuckerberg, he sent a letter to shareholders in 2012 when Facebook was about to go public, and he said, "Our society has reached a tipping point. ... We are going to rewire the way people spread and consume information." And he did, and they did. A few years earlier, 2009, was the first time we saw the share and the like functions introduced to these platforms, and that really changed everything. And you think about our poor monkey brains, which evolved to be very social, but social in communities of about 100 to 150 people max, right? Where there were occasional disagreements, they're now inserted into this global grudge match, where we are seeing a carousel of the world's horrors and then thousands of people fighting over it. And it has totally overwhelmed the circuitry evolution has equipped us with. So where does that leave us? How do we find joy in the work of social justice? Well, here I want to remind folks of another quote from Canadian Marshall McLuhan when he said, "The medium is the message." Social media, TV, radio, these aren't just neutral conduits for bringing information to us. The way these technologies function, the way they work, shapes our brains, shapes how we think about the world, how we process information. And so I know for many people right now, social justice work seems very heavy. It doesn't seem very fun. It doesn't seem very joyful at times. And I'd argue one of the ways we can rediscover the joy in working for justice, one of the ways we can hold the enormity of the world's grief and not be daunted by it, is we gotta change the medium. We have to unplug, we we've got to change the channel and plug into some other new mediums, or maybe some familiar mediums. And here's where I believe spirituality fits in. For thousands of years, spiritual leaders have been calling people to confront the injustices of the world and to stand up to them and make change. And of course, other spiritual leaders have been telling people to do the opposite, but that's not today's talk. But it is important to remember, we as humans have at our disposal an entire mix of technologies for navigating life and processing reality. And many of these spiritual technologies do what I call, or function as, shortcuts, cognitive hacks, ways to get quickly to a deeper understanding of what's happening. And if we have a more technical or scientific or rational approach that takes one piece of information at a time and then considers it and works our way to a conclusion, it takes a bit longer. It sometimes can be a much different experience than these shortcuts that spirituality offers. And, I'm a social scientist. I love science, but I understand it's one lens or one way to understand the world. And there are other ways to process what's going on and come to conclusions. Meditation, for example, is one of these spiritual technologies. A technique that actually is about emptying our mind, not filling it with facts and figures and opinions and ideas, but for a moment, slowing down our cognition, watching and then silencing our thoughts, grounding ourselves in the present moment, embracing a deep mindfulness of the current instant we are in. And scientifically, meditating has been proven to be one of the most effective ways to calm our minds, reduce our anxiety, and allow us to face the many trials and tribulations of life. It can be as effective as antidepressants or talk-based therapy if deployed well. Now, I'm not a big meditator myself, but concepts behind many mindfulness practices have had a huge influence on my life, particularly the ideas from Hindu Vedanta philosophy, and one in particular, this idea of karma yoga, which means detached action. A philosophy that says in any situation, consider what is your duty, and then train your mind to focus on your actions that will help carry out that duty. But at the same time, you're always trying to let go of attachment to the results of those actions. You're trying to act in a world in a way that is free of ego, that says, I do my best, and that is enough. I focus on what I can control. And if my change work fails, or if it succeeds, well, that's really beyond my pay grade. That's not my personal responsibility. I'm just an instrument that the universe is using right now to do right. And I'll say that philosophy profoundly impacted my own life. When I was 18, I was deeply involved in our local United Church in Mississauga. The youth minister left, and they said, hey, Kofi, why don't you run the youth outreach programs we do throughout the summer? And they're pretty complex, and they serve a lot of young people living in particular need up the street. And I took it on, and seeing that pain and suffering of the young people we were serving, and all of the work and the paperwork and having staff and reporting and all that stuff, it overwhelmed me. And literally there was one day, over a week, that all of the skin on the inside of my palms just started peeling off. Like the stress was manifesting in my body. I was becoming daunted by the enormity of the work I was doing. And that's about the time where someone handed me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. And I read it, and I started trying to practice karma yoga in my daily life. And it really helped save me and helped me find the joy in that work again. And there's many other spiritual technologies we can plug into, right? Music, both spiritual or secular, is an important way to process the pain of the world. Prayer, another classic example or tool for processing the grief of the world. And another critical tool is spiritual stories, those classic parables or metaphors. Marcus Borg, a progressive Christian theologian, he has a quote I love, and he says this: the Gospels are true, and some of it actually happened. Meaning, the Gospels of Jesus for him are not a news report, they're not a history, they're parables. They're stories that teach us truths about life, about the meaning of life and the meaning of goodness, even if they didn't happen exactly like it was written in the book. They are a shortcut to greater answers. by presenting simple stories that you can spend a lifetime wrestling with in search of the deeper meaning. How many people have heard that saying, you can give a man a fish and feed him for a day, but teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime? Right? We've all heard that. I find that one of the most profound statements I know of. But I don't know if there was actually ever a man who was starving and some kind soul who came around with a fishing rod and said, let me teach you how to fish. But that doesn't matter. There's so much truth in that parable about how life works, regardless of whether it's talking about an actual event. And so our spiritual traditions and our spiritual texts are full of these life hacks. You think about when I started that charity I mentioned, See, I could have covered the wall to my left with United Way reports on poverty by postal code. I could have put articles about gun violence that was happening in the community. But I chose a spiritual text because I knew focusing my mind on those words of ancient wisdom would help me give perspective, would give me a truth that would reduce my feelings of worry, anxiety, and stress. So what I'm saying, friends, is how important it is in this work of justice to unplug a bit from the social media, from our phones, and reconnect and plug into the spiritual practices and technologies that help us to find grounding. Stop overwhelming our minds with the horrors and the arguments and the divisions. Turn down the dial, and in that quiet, we can find joy. And after having spent a few decades now at this point doing social change work, I can say for sure the work is hard. It takes energy, it takes fuel. And I've seen so many people, so many activists, so many change makers who turn to anger and even hate at times as their fuel, who rage against the injustices of the world. And like jet fuel, they got a huge boost. They found the strength to volunteer and stay out late and sacrifice income and be part of rallies and campaigns. But also like jet fuel, that anger burned hot and fast. And so many of them, after a few years, were burnt out. They were bitter, they were overwhelmed by the grief of the world, and they were unable to continue. They just turned away from the movement, turned away from any activism. My friends, I'm telling you, love, joy, playfulness, and hope, these are the sustainable energy sources for social activism. These are the fuels for the long-distance journey to justice. And I found when we free ourselves and our minds from some of the weight of the world's issues, we give ourselves space to see the beauty in the struggle. When we use tools like spiritual practice to relieve the weight of the world's grief, we gain a lightness to our step. We can literally skip or dance into joy. But joy doesn't live in a vacuum. And personally, I've found rarely does it live just in an individual's individualized spiritual journey. Friends, I believe that primarily joy lives in community, in fellowship, in spaces like this. And not to turn this, I don't want this to be seen as just an anti-social media or a technology sermon, but I have to also say, part of our modern age, and a hallmark really of the post-pandemic world, is separateness. We have so many ways to connect, but people many times feel so separate. I know for myself, I'm still striving in my own life to get back that same level of connectedness I had pre-COVID. And it's slowly returning. But again, it's so easy to rely on digital tools to maintain relationships. We have these easy conduits for connection, but sometimes they can lead to just very transactional connections, relationships with other people. So my last point is, as we unplug and reconnect with the spiritual, the other equally important thing to do is deepen those connections, and many times those face-to-face connections with other human beings, especially those we share the work with, who we share the struggle with. Justice work isn't easy. I've gone to funerals for young people I've worked with. I've visited them in jails, had that experience where you work for a year with someone, get them out of crisis, into employment, and then you see them get fired first week into that new job. Justice work can kind of crush your spirit. But what has always sustained me has been having a great team of people around me, being part of a community where we could lean on each other, we could laugh together, we could dream together, we could cry together, and find joy. Personally, my own spiritual journey, I have less of a traditional theistic view of God, right? A view of God as some kind of all-powerful, separate cosmic actor. But I definitely see a divine connection out there, a purposeful universe, a force that links and permeates all things, a God in us and around us. And I believe this God, this sacred and divine part of life, truly comes alive in community. It manifests when we gather together, when we focus our minds on bringing healing to a world in pain, bringing mending to a world that has been torn apart. When we laugh together in the face of tragedy, when we dance in the shadow of oppression. Working for justice as a community, to me, inherently is a spiritual practice. And it's the place I found all of my experience of joyful justice. So I invite all of you this week, when you feel those worries or anxieties creeping in, to silence the notifications, unplug for a bit from the global conversation, ground yourself in what nourishes your soul, plug in more meaningfully to your community, whether it's going to an event or volunteering or even just visiting a friend who's lonely. Tune out the grief and worry. Embrace the liberation that comes from spiritual practices and a life in spiritual community, and refine the joy which can come from the beautiful struggle to build a better world for all. Thank you, and walk in peace.
Thank you, Kofi, for that very enlightening and inviting talk to just be able to move away from the crises and give us permission to take care of ourselves. So now let's take a moment to go deeper into ourselves in a time of meditation or prayer, if you wish. Just find a comfortable spot in your seat. Find a just comfortable position, hands and feet in a comfortable place. Slow down your breathing. Slow down your mind. Close your eyes if you do so wish to reduce the input from everywhere around you. We'll have a minute or two of silence, and then Susanne will start playing music, and then to finish off the meditation, Susanne will we'll go through a very loved Unitarian hymn, Spirit of Life, which is a prayer to invite comfort and understanding.
Spirit of Life was written by Carolyn McDade after going through some hard times with a friend. She came home and sat at the piano and wrote this prayer, Spirit of Life. And she's singing it to herself, for herself. I was reading about this song, and a minister suggested, what if we switch the pronouns and make it less about just ourselves, but Spirit of Life coming to our communities, coming infusing us as a community. Spirit of Life, come unto us, sing in our hearts all the stirrings of compassion. And I invite us to try singing it that way now to see how that feels. Mark, if you could pull up the slide for that, please. The second one. There we go. Thank you so much. And I'll invite Moira to come up too. We have some movements for Spirit of Life. If you'd like to move this song while you sing it, you're welcome to rise and move with Moira. Please join me. Spirit of life, come unto us, sing in our hearts all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold us close, wings set us free. Spirit of life, come to us, come to us. Thank you, everyone.
This is a time in our service where we show justice to our congregation, where we show thanks to our home and to the people in it. This congregation cannot thrive without our financial offerings. If you are giving money in the baskets this week, please feel free to find one of the envelopes that are in the back of the chair with a pen and fill out your name and your amount and offer it in the basket. If you do not have enough time to do so during the time of offering, you may offer it to the collectors after the service. We also thank those who have given post-dated checks and withdrawals from the bank. For those of you on Zoom, you will see a link in the chat that will send you to our donations page. The collectors, please come and collect the baskets while we learn a piece of music from Susanne. And when the piece is done, please bring the baskets back up. Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. As the baskets are going around, I will teach you a song, and then we can sing it all together. Mark, could you pull up the lyrics slide? Thank you so much. Turning of the World by Ruth Bellum. I'll sing a phrase, you sing it back to me. No, my mic's not on. Okay, so, here we go. Let us sing this song for the turning of the world. Let's try that. Oh, hi, there I am. Let us sing this song for the turning of the world. The next phrase goes, that we may turn as one. Let's try that. That we may turn as one. next phrase sounds. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. With every voice, with every song, we will turn this move along. And our lives will feel the echo of our turning. And our lives will feel the echo of our turning. Yes. With every voice, with every song, with every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. We will move this world along. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. With every voice, with every song, we will move this world along. And our lives will feel the echo of our turning. And our lives will feel the echo of our turning. Good, if we could bring the baskets up and folks could rise to sing this together.
And if you have found home, friends, and growing spirits here, let this offering be a thanks to our greater countenance and our greater good.
Let us sing this song for the turning of the world, that we may turn as one. With every voice and every song,
Lovely music. Now I invite Jillian Newcomb to please come and extinguish our chalice, and please sing along with our extinguishing invocation. Now let us please, for those of you that are willing, let us form a circle, join hands, arms. And I offer my thanks to Susanne, to Julia, and to Kofi, and to Mark, and to all of you who are here to make this service very spiritual and very hopeful. I offer this closing blessing. On this hard ground that we walk, let us take a step in hope that it may soften the ground. Our service is ended. Go in peace.